Shout out to everyone here that wants to protect water. Shout out to everybody at home praying. This whole nation is watching. Look. Riding with my chief goes back to creation, to creation, to creation. Native in my blood goes back to creation, to creation. Hey. Native before America was a nation, is a nation, was a nation. Native before America was a nation, was a nation. Been here, still here, the plan was still fear. Guess what, still here. 500 years of epigenetic pain been running through our veins. So what you really saying when you chasing all that pain? Watch the evil in your face acting fake. They don't want all the hustle to relate to the struggle that we face every day. So why you spread the hate? We elevate and pray for better days. Can you see the shit we've been through? Losing all my can to, everything we stand to, surfing up the can to. Then we just continue back on the warpath, repping no more half-stepping. Uncle Sam threatened ever since we stepped in. Not knowing prayer has been our greatest weapon. Power in the knowledge and the fist that we're clenching. Fighting for the earth, we've been set tripping. Native like my blood goes back to creation, to creation, to creation. Native like my blood goes back to creation, to creation. Native before America was a nation, was a nation, was a nation. What native before America was a nation, was a nation. Hey, he at home, so he ain't down. Talking about our people like he's an activist now. Speak words that make this profound. Rather die on my feet than live on the ground. This is certain, this is pain, this reality. These are nations, it's my people, it's my family. I went to college, started rapping, why you mad at me? Man, I'm killing all those rappers, I gotta claim insanity. We drink and smoke, we sell this dope. We tying knots at the end of our ropes, but holy words are hope. I got demons, just like you, in my pain and that drinking. Just like you, I found serenity and bring it to the east. Hoping one day I find my inner peace. Until then, I'm bombing on my enemies. Always repping where I'm from, I come from dirt streets. This is me, goes back to creation, to creation, to creation. Hey, when I say water is, you say light. Ready? Water is, water is, water is, water is, water is, yeah. Hey, hey, hey. Niggas wanna challenge me.
As you know, that is none other than Not Ani Nez Means. And I got a kind of a running agreement with Not Ani to use music. That music was actually recorded, as Steve Oizumi said, at Ocheti. That was at camp. And now we don't know if that means, line 3 camps. There's about 5 camps at line 3 that definitely need our attention. There was a spotted elk camp or roots camp on the Spotted Elk Trail relative to the Keystone XL pipeline. I just want to say thank you all. Annie K, Sammy Love, Snohomish, the lady checking in from Snohomish territory. I saw somebody check in from the land of Tecumseh, from Shawnee, Ohio, not Shawnee, Oklahoma. A lot of our native peoples were moved from their traditional homelands, their traditional places, to Oklahoma. That's how Oklahoma became the unofficial capital of the indigenous world, the North American, indigenous America. Let's just say that, in what is now known as the United States. Thank you all for checking in. Thank you for letting me know where you're checking in from. I'm able to see your comments this time because I'm actually live. So I do want to say thank you for tuning in. This is Cut to the Chase number 23. Lila Daya Yahipalo, Lila Wopila Tanka, Ichichapalo, Mitakuye. Jennifer Chasealone checking in all the way from Wounded Knee. That's right around my home there. I live in what is called the Pine Ridge Village. And I didn't know that Pine Ridge Village was the agency of the Pine Ridge Reservation. Just like Fort Yates is the agency of the Standing Rock Reservation, where I grew up. I just went from agency to agency, and that is, we used to call them people loaf around the forts or hang around the forts, the people that hung around the agency hoping to catch a few crumbs from colonial hands, after they had kind of diced up the main course, whatever kind of crumbs fell from there, the loaf around the fort Indians were happy to receive that. And so, of course, we don't come from those kind of folks, and we certainly don't celebrate the people that made those decisions to kind of, hard decisions, but they still turned on their own people. I would say much too soon, but again, I'm not in that time. I can't judge those times. And so I want to thank you all for tuning in. This is Cut to the Chase number 23. It's July 7th. Again, according to the Gregorian concept, indigenous nations operate on different series of moons, different series of seasons, and we're in that season right now, and people are engaged all over Pine Ridge, all over the northern plains in different ceremonial obligations. But I'll finish the show by talking about that, because I think that the type of people that we have listening in, shout out to Utah, shout out to everybody tuning in. If you're just tuning in, please share the stream. Whatever you're sharing on the screen, we can see, I can see. Thank you for tuning in. This is it's just an honor for me to be able to do this show live. And next week we might have to do a pre-recorded show. I just want to warn you about that right now. Next week you're probably going to get a pre-recorded show, but that's okay. We're gonna, our control room is gonna mash it up and make it very massive for you. Bridger Takini, all the way from the West End, West Side, shout out. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for tuning in. I really, the West End, I mean, Cheyenne River holds a special place in my heart. If I disenrolled from Standing Rock, for reasons to be useful, politically useful on the Pine Ridge Reservation. But if it doesn't work out on the Pine Ridge Reservation, I might have to disenroll there and go enroll over in Cheyenne River. See if they'll accept me there. That's a joke. I don't really care where I'm enrolled. Those concepts are much inapplicable. They're colonial concepts and constructs that are akin to blood quantum, and people identifying themselves as full bloods, and then discriminating against all of our people for something beyond their control. The makeup of their DNA. Like so. That was just a joke. I love my Lakota people, my Lakota nation, and all indigenous nations. Oyate Luta, the red nations, the red peoples. Shout out to the other peoples too, but the red nations are still holding it down, trying to honor our obligation to all of creation, and that is something that we take very, very seriously. It's the reason why we're always ending up in some sort of front line, ending up getting arrested. And I used to think that when I first sort of became conscious, like, why are we always fighting? Why do we have to carry the torch of everyone and fight the entire financial, extractive, industrial war machine? Like, why is that on us? And fortunately, there are now woke allies who are coming to our aid, who are not letting us stand alone, who also recognize that they are as much involved and integral and part and parcel to our survival, our collective survival as a human species. They are now standing with us. We are now standing with them because of the different academic trainings and so forth that we all have. We're able to translate our struggle, translate indigeneity, indigenous worldviews across all these new media, these new mediums, across these institutions. We're able to inform them and show them that they have missed out. They took the wrong path somewhere, and it's our job to try to bring it back into balance. Shout out to Walk Paula, South Dakota. Will Black Cloud, I see you. I see everybody tuning in. Betsy, Randy, please share this stream. That is a huge favor for us. And by us, I mean the team that puts this show on, but also our sponsors. That includes Lakota People's Law Project, a division, a subsidiary, a spawn of the Romero Institute. That includes Last Real Indians. Shout out to the Northwest Coast, the Pacific Northwest, where Last Real Indians is. It's run out of there. It's still headquartered out here in the Black Hills, but Brother Matt has been holding it down. And I've been meaning to catch up with Gabe Galanda because they've got another lawsuit coming, but I won't be able to do that on this show. And so I do want to shout out to anybody in the Pacific Northwest. We got people out there. We love you. It's coastal plains civilizations. We're all in this together, and we saw the actions that you had going down on the 4th of July as well. And I do want to get to the rundown of the show, what we're going to do tonight. If we could make a note, I didn't even make a note of when we started. We started 20 minutes late. That's the first time we've ever, well, I don't know if it's the first time we've ever done that. Yeah, 20 minutes late, definitely. And I'm not going to say Indian time. I'm not going to do that tonight. We ain't doing that. I had some things come up, and responsibility time. That's what we had. We begin when we're ready. But let me show you a little bit of a rundown. Hey, look at that. There's a running ticker of the time that we've been on the show. I did not know that until tonight. Until July 7th, episode number 23, I realized that I could have been looking to the top left of my screen here to check time and to kind of follow what's going down and to try to stick to a time frame. But time doesn't exist for this little bit of time. For this little bit of time, it does not exist. I'm here live with you. I'm able to share a little bit with you, even the Apache Nation checking in. But first and foremost, I want to cover the Landback action that happened in Rapid City, courtesy of NDN Collective, courtesy of the American Indian Movement, AIM Grassroots, courtesy of the Tokala Okola Kichie, courtesy of every single person and family that showed up on the 4th of July to celebrate the 4th of July. You've been lying a long time, colonizer. 4th of July. Now, secondly, after the Landback action, I want to highlight the Byhalia pipeline victory. If some of you have not heard of this, this is a pipeline owned by Plains American, which is a big oil company. They own a pipeline in and around Memphis, Tennessee. And we had a brother on the show, Justin. His name is Justin Pearson, I believe. He was on the show. We were able to get an interview with him. I can't even say enough. I didn't think we are very busy right now. And the shows that we're putting forth to you during the time of ceremony are really kind of, you know, they're not bang up jobs, but I would say they're whiz bang. They're indicative of the fact that we are all stretched for time and trying to make it happen. So I really do appreciate you all tuning in. Again, please share this stream. No doubt. Don't even think twice about sharing it 2, 3, 4, 5 times during the stream. We appreciate it. But we are going to cover the Byhalia pipeline because we have to celebrate our victories. After that, Jessica Reznicek. I don't know if any of you had heard that name, but you should definitely know who Jessica Reznicek is, because her and Ruby Montoya were involved in civil resistance, in direct action on the Dakota Access Pipeline in the state of Iowa. And Jessica was just recently sentenced to 8 years. That's 8 years in a federal prison. And we cannot let this type of stuff happen. Not on our watch. So Jessica Reznicek, we need everyone's help. Everyone on deck, please find out who Jessica Reznicek is. We are going to call for the commutation of her sentence. And you could see that she has, I don't know who's maintaining that email for her, but please test that out. freejessicareznicek@gmail.com. She is facing 8 years, and it breaks our hearts. I can't even I can't even put words around it. I know what it's like to face 6 years as a maximum sentence. Jessica was facing 20 and more, and so is Ruby Montoya, facing more than 20 years in prison. And it's, our fates are in the hands of these judges. And these judges are paying attention, and they're going by the laws that are written for them to uphold. And that includes, we'll get into that when we cover Jessica Reznicek, but it's heavy. I can't put it into words, the gravity and the magnitude of what Jessica is facing right now. And those are the words right there from Carta Kaur. She is punished. She's being punished for trying to save us all, redeem the human species, and protect and defend clean water, the sanctity and the integrity of Mother Earth. And after Jessica Reznicek, after we spend some time speaking about Jessica, I'm going to, some of our audience has seen how many times we have gone in on South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem. She has taken a multitude of steps of ill-advised, misguided, ill-informed steps in her time. So just know that I am going to run down what was at the top of my head just an hour ago, when, sometimes we try to have this show scripted, because part of this show is, yes, live. We want to do this live, but we want to be able to offer to you a well organized, well thought out analysis, so that the issues that we know you care about, we know there's a certain reason why you watch a show like Cut to the Chase, so you can get unedited, uncensored, but filtered, in the sense that we are trying to filter what really matters to our people, what really matters to our country, what is extremely important, what are we covering and offering that you can't get anywhere else. You can't get in mainstream. You can't get in places that are beholden to their advertisers. If you're interested in advertising on this show, you kind of have to support the progressive, social, political, eco-conscious ethos that we all have here, that we've all demonstrated in our work, whether that's on the front line or in the halls of Congress or in the courtroom or in the streets of all these cities or in city halls or wherever those arenas take us. We know that you give a damn. We know that you care. And we know that you come here for those reasons. So we want to honor that. And I invested a lot of money in my legal education in the University of Denver Stern College of Law. Still got mad debt hanging over my head, and President Biden hasn't relieved it yet. I don't know what's going on there, but like I said before, those guys want that student loan money. They're going to have to come to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. So lastly, after I talk about Landback, the Byhalia pipeline, Jessica Reznicek, Kristi Noem, I want to spend a little bit of time expressing and sharing, why this time in indigenous cultures, indigenous worldviews, indigenous nations is important. It's because we've have these age-old, eons old, older than time, older than we know, older than we're capable of knowing, obligations to conduct certain ceremonies. So I just wanted to share a little bit about those. I'm not an expert in those fields, but when you have children, you've got to be able to talk about real things very quickly, because they do not run out of questions, and they certainly don't run out of tenacity in hitting you up about those questions, the big questions, where all of our children are natural born philosophers. But let me talk about Landback, this action that happened in Rapid City. I wanted to lead off with this, with a review or a recap of what happened in Rapid City. Some of you may have seen that there was a march It was live streamed on NDN Collective. It was live streamed on AIM Grassroots. It was part of it was live streamed on Last Real Indians and on Uniting Resilience. I mean, just all of the families and the organizations that are in the Rapid City area got together on 4th of July to let the city know, once again, just like a year ago, we had to let President Trump know and Kristi Noem know that this is Lakota territory and that all of these lands, the private lands, the federal lands, the state lands, they are all in unclear legal title. The title to that land is clouded. It is subject to the treaty that we, the Sioux Nation, the Great Sioux Nation, the Northern Cheyenne, or the Cheyenne people, like I said, they were also subject to removal to what is now called Oklahoma. That's why there is a Northern Cheyenne. That's why there is a Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho tribal nation today. But that alliance, the Okashpe Yamani, I've heard it referred to as this alliance of what is sometimes in the English language called Sioux, the Oceti Shakomi, the Cheyenne people, and the Arapaho people had an alliance, and we defended this land. And that is why there are concepts and prophecies such as that of land back. And land back became a buzzword, if you recall, a year and 4 days ago, when all of us went to Keystone, South Dakota, and rallied there and would not let Trump's goons ignore us and act like they don't have to seek our permission or our consent or our input when they put us at risk, like they did during Trump's visit to the Sacred Black Hills. Well, and land back, of course, is a prophecy that was put out there, put forth. I first heard it reading Fool's Crow's words. He was the man who said, if the world would put land back in indigenous hands, the world could begin to heal. That is where it was identified as a prophecy, as something that came to pass and that we need to fulfill by our action, because action is prayer. We can fulfill that prophecy. And now, in the middle of the climate crisis, I mean, we're having record heat waves all over these lands. And I'm afraid that we are just going to continue to go down that path where we cannot ignore this. And I know that I very much know that our children are not ignoring it, and they are urgent, they are desperate, and they are in critical condition, and they are going forth, and they are emboldened. They are made brave by those realizations that Western civilization has given us a shelf life, has conducted itself like a virus on the humans, on the global species, the global ecosystem. The human species is now capable of destroying the whole place. So that's what land back is about, is creating those relationships again with the land. It happened when we bought Peshla back. Tribal nations and other organizations were involved in the reclamation of sacred land. It happens when the Rosebud Sioux tribe, the Northern Cheyenne Sioux tribe, is buying land around the Black Hills, around Bear Butte, Flandreau, even Flandreau. Shout out to Flandreau for opening the first Native Nations cannabis shop, the first dispensary of medical cannabis in what is now the confines of the state of South Dakota. Shout out to that. But they are reclaiming land in and around the Black Hills. And Rapid City in particular was primed for a land back action. So I want to say thank you to Crystal Tubles, the land back coordinator of an organization called NDN Collective, and NDN Action, which I would assume is a division of NDN Collective, was responsible for some of the organizing and the things that went down in the city of Rapid City. And it takes a lot to put themselves out there. And I don't know the other three individuals that were arrested from the banner drop, but in Rapid City, South Dakota, this is a place where Native people make up 10 to 15% of the city population. 1/10 or maybe a little more is Native people in this city of 80,000 roughly. Yet we fill these jails. We are the majority population inside of Rapid City's jails. Pennington County's jails are 54% Native American. That's in this city of Rapid City. Statewide, 10% of the population is Native. 33% of all men in South Dakota state prisons are Native. More than 50% of all women in South Dakota state's prisons are Native American. I mean, that's just reprehensible. But the way that Mayor Allender, the way the chief of police, the way that they speak, the way that they are almost unaware, or they are very deliberate in expressing that colonial, that violent psychological warfare of colonial programming that is no good for settlers and certainly no good for the indigenous nations who are in the process of reclaiming the Black Hills, resettling the Black Hills. That's what this was about. And I want to show you a short video of what happened on the 4th of July. So Control, if we could please roll that in. This is what happened just 3 days ago.
According to the Indian Collective website, 4 people were arrested yesterday during a protest that was staged in Rapid City by the group under the banner the 4th of July. NDN billing it as a call for justice for Indigenous people who have been, quote, overcriminalized by colonial government and law enforcement on their own lands. News Center 1's Dominique Smith reports.
For the members of the Oglala Sioux tribe, it was a time to change a false narrative of natives in Rapid.
We're really tired of being seen as violent people. We're not out here trying to be violent, cause destruction. We're literally fighting for our lives, for our children's lives, for the next generation. And we have to, and let you know, nothing's gonna change. We're gonna constantly get lip service, and we're done, we're done with that.
Both Native and non-Native members of the community came out to support the movement, not only for Landback, but against police brutality and for the missing, murdered, and Indigenous women and children.
We've needed this for a long time, and we need more.
I have grandchildren and going to have great-grandchildren that are going to live here. And my thing is to make sure that they're safe.
It's important for me to be here, to encourage, to empower, to set an example, to honor, to respect. And it's solidarity. I love it. I love seeing it.
As the walk came to an end, a group scaled the grain and mill tower downtown to reveal a Landback banner. As crowds made their way to the site, law enforcement increased over the evening to ensure the safety of protesters and the public at large and continue to protect the right to free speech. In Rapid City, Dominique Smith, News Center 1.
Shout out to everybody in that interview, including Norma Rendon. I did not see that they identified Norma, but she is a relative of mine, my aunt, possibly my cousin. Anyhow, I'm just now meeting all of my family, the Oglala side of my lineage. But I want to thank everybody for speaking that day, everybody for organizing. I did not see Hermes in that piece, but I want to thank Hermes Betleune, certainly Sunny Red Bear. Oh, she was in that video, the director of racial equity at NDN, Earl Tall and Brian Brewer, who were there on behalf of the Okola Kichie, that is the Kit Fox Warrior Society that is operating on not just the Pine Ridge Reservation, but there are certainly a few thousand members that are active on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about Kristi Noem, because since I moved to Pine Ridge, I'm able to see how the Indian Wars truly have never ended. I understood that, of course, but that was only in the context of understanding on a theory level. going to law school, learning about jurisdictional conflicts, civil, regulatory, criminal conflicts over taxation. But those fights are wrongfully and to our disadvantage reserved for the courtroom, because those are not our judges in there. That is not our law that they're applying in there. That is laws that these cats have designed. And so our struggle is in the streets. Yes, I respect the courtroom. I respect the decorum. Yes, I respect the United States Constitution just as much as I respect the treaties that we entered with the United States. But I know, as well as you know, as well as all of our listeners know, that the judges are paying attention to what happens in the House of Congress and on the streets. So I want to thank everybody who took to the streets on the 4th of July, including our brothers and sisters in the Pacific Northwest. We saw you that day, and we want to thank you. Now, the Byhalia pipeline, there is a victory that we need to speak of. If you remember, we interviewed Justin Pearson, who leads a group known as the Memphis Community Against the Pipeline, MCAP. That was their tagline, their Twitter handle, MCAP, MCAP. Plains All American is the big oil company that has announced it is dropping its project, which of course is huge news. We do want to show you a bit of the victory, a bit of Justin Pearson, so that you can get a sense of the victory that should be celebrated right now. And Rev Yearwood talked about the Byhalia pipeline as well. But Control, if we could roll in that video, I just want to show our viewers what's going on with the Byhalia pipeline.
Our battles for injustice are intersectional. Whether it be indigenous communities or Black communities, we are facing the same systems of oppression economically, racially, and all the other ways. To have conversations like this and really learn and understand those struggles actually creates more solidarity, which is what we're going to need if we're going to be successful in protecting our planet and our communities. And so, yes, 1 million people rely on the groundwater and aquifer in Memphis, Tennessee. And this company is looking to put a 1,500 high-pressure crude oil pipeline right atop that. 1 pound of crude oil spilling, we know they spill, pipelines always spill, will contaminate 25 million gallons of water. All of our city and region will be impacted, but it will be the poor. It will be those who are most marginalized who are going to be impacted the most. This will be the first time in our city's history that we choose to protect a drinking water source that is our only source of drinking water. We're the most unique as it relates to water in the country because we're the only municipality that relies 100% on water from an aquifer to support our community. We started rallying and we started canvassing. And the more we talked to people, the more two things became apparent. One, nobody knew what was happening. And two, they didn't want the pipeline. And so we started to advocate with our elected leaders to get them more engaged and involved, such as Dr. Jeff Warren on the City Council, United States Congressman Steve Cohen, Mayor Lee Harris. And once we started to build that political momentum so that people could understand what was at stake here, now we have our mayor of the city saying there's an unacceptable risk to our drinking water if we allowed for this to happen. Right? We have had an opportunity today to speak before the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council to tell them, look, the nationwide permit 12 that you're allowing for line 3 and line 5 and Dakota access, right? These are actually intentionally built to harm Black, indigenous, and communities of color. And we are fortunate that people across the country are starting to listen. We had Vice President Al Gore come to Memphis advocating with us. And the cry of people who have been marginalized, right, and disempowered is actually getting connected to people who are in power. And it is empowering those who have been disempowered to actually create some change.
We're going to use that power, and we're going to create justice right here in Memphis.
A passionate Justin Pearson spoke in front of Memphis City Hall Tuesday, just days after the cancellation of the controversial Bahalia pipeline. Pearson has been one of the main voices of the pipeline as part of Memphis Communities Against the Pipeline. Friday, Plains All American, the company behind the project, announced an end to the project. Now Pearson declares victory.
Keep believing that it is possible because we saw what was possible when we galvanized.
Among the plans Pearson supports are a pair of legislative fixes. One, making its way through Memphis City Council, would strengthen city efforts at protecting the sand aquifer. It would also create a review board for future pipeline projects. Another, jointly considered by the Shelby County Commission and City Council, would outlaw oil pipelines within 1,500 feet of residential areas. Another, to add more protections to the aquifer, is under development.
If we can get a crude oil billion-dollar pipeline company to stop, certainly we can get the people in our community to do right by us.
Yeah, they're not the end-all be-all to protect our community, but they are preventative maintenance.
Joining the group was Scotty Fitzgerald, a homeowner fighting the oil company's eminent domain claim. That would have allowed the company to take her property after paying her for it. She questions whether the oil company will return in the future to do the same, to which Pearson says he's just about certain they will.
We need to be ready legislatively to be protected from that.
An outstanding question, whether the people who decided to sell their property to the oil company will be able to get their property back. Dakari Turner, Fox 13 News.
Thank you for that, Control. That is Justin Pearson of MCAP, Memphis Community Against the Pipeline. Now, I do remember very specifically Reverend Yearwood mentioning the Byhalia pipeline. And at that time, when we were in Washington, D.C., raising awareness about Leonard Peltier, the victory at Byhalia pipeline was not realized, but it is now realized that oil company, they are called Plains All American. They have announced that they are dropping that project, which is huge news, which that means other things are taking place behind the scenes, because there were big names involved in the Byhalia pipeline. This is America's plan, and Biden has to own this. Biden must be held responsible. Just because the blue team got in there doesn't mean that we have any kind of some sort of unwritten obligation like they get a pass, because they used to think of themselves as the party of the working people in this country. Just because they're not as blatantly poisonous and toxic and cancerous as the radical right, there are still old slave-owning racists in the Democratic Party. Democratic Party probably had KKK members. It's not that simple. So just because it's the blue team doesn't mean they get any kind of pass. Right now, President Biden should be speaking about Jessica Reznicek. That is one of the two sisters who were overcharged. They suffered trumped up charges. They were charged during the presidency of Donald Trump. They were charged with conspiracy. They were charged with the use of fire in damaging energy infrastructure. And in what may be a first, maybe not. Maybe others have been persecuted and prosecuted, subjugated, and targeted for breaching national security, for terroristic acts against the United States. But here we have two people who are white passing. I don't know if they're white identifying, but they are kind of phenotypically apparently descended from Euro-American peoples who have had the privilege and the immunities that were designed by this country's slave-owning, heteronormative founding fathers. Normally, white folks could rely on that privilege and expect not to be sentenced as seriously as, say, Red Fawn Fellis, who was sentenced to 5 years in prison and did almost 4 years in prison. Well, here we have Jessica Reznicek, who had a terrorism enhancement used against her in a federal court in the state of Iowa. And now she is sentenced to 8 years in a federal prison as of very, very recently. So this is dead serious when the United States Congress, the Senate and the House, are passing laws that are allowing for a terrorism enhancement. And you saw just recently on social media, they're doing this if you're standing up against capitalism. We went through this at Standing Rock, being labeled as religiously driven indigenous jihadists. So you can tell where the spin and where the propaganda, from what perspective it's being created. And now they're using that against our own people, formerly, quote unquote, their own people, people who could normally rely on some of that privilege for a more lenient sentence. But when it comes to standing up against the financial extractive war machine, those classifications don't matter anymore. So Jessica Reznicek has been sentenced to that 8 years. And Ruby Montoya hangs in the balance, with her sentencing set to take place July 29th. So we want Ruby and Jessica to know that we are not forgetting about them, that Biden needs to hear their names. Jessica's sentence needs to be commutated, and Ruby's charges need to be dropped. She should not be under this level of duress, and we are going to do all we can to help this situation. So Control, if we could roll in a short video, I will join you on the back side of that.
Being really grounded in what is right comes into play, and it wasn't an easy thing to do. It wasn't an easy decision to make. I discerned it at length, knowing that it could potentially alienate me from communities and even from the movement itself. And I to make some calculated choices, and they were very prayerful and they were very thoughtful. And the conclusion that I made was that in my heart, this was the thing to do. In my heart, this is not violent. In my heart, the laws that protect this pipeline are the laws that are violent.
You thought some of these things out. So does that mean that you knew kind of what could have happened?
Yeah, of course. I think that that's a really important part of my story. Also, I thank you for asking that, because, you know, I entered like the valve site multiple times and multiple locations, on multiple days. And each time there was a process of preparation for that, knowing full well what the legal consequences were. Working through that fear, sitting with it, and then coming out the other side saying, no, this is the right thing for me to do right now. Particularly because I had attended all of the, you know, IU Utility Board meetings, and I'd exercised and employed like all conventional means to address this issue and make the public's voice heard. And I think part of the desperation came from that, because we're taught, like as young American children, that things you do to affect change in the world, and these are the things that our government officials do to reflect the wishes of the public. And to see the failure in that system was really disheartening. And I think that ultimately that led me to come to some decisions like on my own.
So now, are you fearful? Are you fearful of all those years, the time lost, and things like that in jail? Are there things you're afraid of losing? And what are they?
Mm-hmm. I would say none of it is time lost. I think that there's purpose and meaning wherever we are in our lives. So, and I've come to that conclusion through this journey. I've had to reach that conclusion. This process has gone on for over 4 years now, just kind of waiting for what happened yesterday, or some version of what happened yesterday. And So I've had to really dig down deep inside to come to the understanding that wherever I am, I will do good, I will be good, I will be of service, and regardless of what like maybe dominant culture thinks, there is community in prison, and I will be that community. I will be a member of that community. And I think that just being resolved with who I am are the things that carry you through the challenges in life. And, you know, there are many who come before me who have spent time in prison for their convictions and spent time in prison and really affected change in this nation and in the world. And who knows what I may contribute someday to making this world a better place.
She is indeed a strong woman, and she needs our help. This country, that is part of the fabric of our country. That is part of the renegotiation of the social contract. Are we going to be a country that allows United States courts, that allows the United States Congress to tell this country's people, this country's constituents, that if you stand up to the extractive industry, you are going to be considered a terrorist? Federal judges will be authorized to enhance your charges with a terrorism classification. Declaring who is a terrorist in this country is not something that should be controlled by the Euro-American heteronormative class, because they declared anyone that didn't look like them to be terrorists, to be potential subvertants, including all women. Women didn't have the right to vote in this country. Black folks didn't have the right to vote in this country. Racism is a real thing. White privilege is also a very real thing. White people, European people, invented the concept of race. All of the power dynamics in this country were designed for the white race, to the exclusion, the institutional legal exclusion of everyone else. So somebody in the comment section said that race is not a factor. Just because you're white doesn't mean you have white privilege. By definition, it does. Just by definition, I cannot be racist. I can be prejudiced, but in order to be a racist, you have to have the levers of societal power working in your favor. So it is ironic, it is unacceptable that Jessica Reznicek is getting sentenced, not because she's white, but because she's willing to stand up to those forces, just as in the same way Leonard Peltier was willing to stand up to those forces. We cannot allow these industries, the financial extractive industries, which determine our foreign policy and our energy policy, we cannot allow them to label people like Jessica or Red Fawn, Jessica Reznicek or Red Fawn Fallis, as terrorists. Ruby Montoya is set to be sentenced July 29th. We will catch up with her. We will find out what's going on with her, because they have to know that we hold them in our being. And all of this is related to who can declare the other a terrorist, who can declare themselves a patriot. That goes right to the heart of whose version of history is being taught in our schools, whose identity is being installed and favored and inculcated in everyone in this country. Those are very germane questions because they are now related to who can stand up to the financial extractive complex. Why do we have to face prison time to drink clean water so our babies, our children, our adult children can inherit a clean earth? That is ridiculous. And it's almost a climate crisis, colonially induced dissociation. It is an existential threat, and it causes a level of anxiety, a level of urgency that steals your peace. There is no peace in colonialism. If you know peace in colonialism, you might be part of the oppressive dynamic. Like, and I just need to move us on, like Kristi Noem. I can tell you we've got what the heck is going on here? Okay, absolutely. I need to explore that more. This dissociation, this cognitive, this internal dissonance that is expressing itself. But this is a woman, Kristi Noem. We've got updates for you, and it doesn't appear that we're going to run out of tomfoolery, of jackassery that is being carried out by South Dakota's governor. She is part of the reason. The only reason why we ever make the news is because we're doing stupid things. The whole country is looking at us and thinking, how could you elect a leader that is this ill-advised, this misguided? But it's more than that. It is violent settler colonialism, a violent settler mentality, an outdated, obsolete worldview that is still very much at work right here and right now. Everywhere there is the KKK. In South Dakota, for instance, this violent settler colonialism is also a psychological warfare, but it's also a practical and potentially physical warfare. And for us, I don't say that lightly or flippantly. For us, it's already a physical, spiritual war just to be ourselves, to be free from getting thrown in one of South Dakota's jails or one of Washington State's jails or one of Montana's or Colorado's or New Mexico or Arizona or California, wherever there's heavy indigenous populations, we are in them prisons. This is already a physical war for us. And now we are also fighting to be free from colonial extractive encroachment and a collective ignorance in this country. You know, just to protect Mother Earth, we got to subject ourselves to prison time. I mean, we are all recognizing the gravity of the climate crisis. And I know that people who are listening to are avid listeners. People who say, yeah, I remember that interview with Justin Pearson. I forget who said that, but shout out to you. Shout out to everybody who's been tuned in. We designed this show to be the tip of the spear, to be able to say those things that need to be said, to be able to analyze it, go out and aggregate all of that info and give it to you in a way that is intelligible, that translates into the language that we are all speaking. And so Kristi Noem, in order for her to do the things that she does, I mean, it's like at every turn. That's right. Oscar Hayek is still facing charges. They brought out Marty Jackley, the Indian fighter, the wannabe Bill Janklow. If you don't know who Bill Janklow is, he's the guy that said, when I talk about a violent settler colonial mentality, he said, in order to solve the American Indian problem, the American Indian movement problem, the only way to solve that problem is to put a gun to the American Indian movement's head, to the leadership's heads, and pull the trigger. He says this, he was the attorney general of this state of South Dakota. When he said that, he becomes the governor. And guys like Marty Jackley want to follow in his footsteps. Same thing as Kristi Noem. They are carrying the torch, the tiki torch, for all of the racist, the closet racist, the overt racist, the violent settler colonizers, the people who hate indigenous nations, who want to deny indigenous nations. Shout out to the Indigenation Facebook page. I caught your stuff sometimes. They want to deny us our proper due, our proper recognition. These are the types of people who gleefully executed a genocide and still uphold those same policies legally, politically, and economically. They still continue to hold us in oppression, to hold our lands in, they are in possession of stolen property. Let's say that they're like criminals who could not have received clear title to this land. That is a legal impossibility. They are also our neighbors, the type of neighbors who celebrate butchers, butcherers of unarmed women and children, like Custer, the town of Custer, the courthouse, Custer, the state park, Custer, the county, people naming their ranches after Custer. Well, now South Dakota's Governor Kristi Noem is sending National Guard personnel to the USA-Mexico border, and she needs to be called out on it. I know that this is a Corey Lewandowski-esque stunt to get her name in the headlines, and some of our listeners were like, why are you paying so much attention to Kristi Noem? It's because she represents a very dangerous, radical fringe of the American public, the type of fringe that executed a bloody insurrection in the United States Capitol. Now, as a publicity stunt, her and this other pseudo leader, this stuffed suit of a man, Kevin Kramer, who is a senator from the state of North Dakota, are sending National Guard to the US-Mexico border. But Kristi Noem took it a step further and is sending these National Guard soldiers, sending them to the US-Mexico border to capture those indigenous families who are fleeing conditions in their home countries, conditions which were partly caused by the United States foreign policies to destabilize them. She is sending them there at the bidding of a wealthy fat cat who is donating $1 million so that she can pull this publicity stunt off. And she's the type of person, when I say that colonial violence is real, when the checkpoint controversy was going on the Pine Ridge Reservation and to some extent on Cheyenne River, but Pine Ridge had thousands of a few thousand people motivated and signed up and ready to repel any kind of intrusion into those borders. And almost 1,000 people showed up to those borders to meet a threat that was made by Governor Kristi Noem. And she said that tribal nations will face legal actions if they don't take down those checkpoints in 48 hours. Well, when that 48 hours came due, we thought she was going to show up on our borders with the National Guard. So, I mean, luckily, the Second Amendment applies to us, too, to the indigenous nations, because everybody showed up armed to those checkpoints to defend them against a very violent settler colonial intrusion in the year 2020. So when I say that the Indian wars are not over, they're really not. And for Kristi Noem to send National Guard's personnel over to the United States border as a publicity stunt at the bidding of $1 million is completely disrespectful. That's what you get, South Dakota. You get that when you have cowards. Same in North Dakota. Burgum isn't a soldier. When you have non-combatants, people who are not willing to engage in combat, who are not willing to ask, who are willing to ask others to do things they themselves are not willing to do. This is what you get. You get cowards for leaders that know that they don't have to go to battle. They don't need to get deployed. Their children don't need to go into battle. They don't need to get deployed. It's we, the working class people, who are going to get deployed, who are going to be asked to spill our blood for those false patriotic causes that you sell us, that you tell us that these aliens, these indigenous families are aliens. They are the other. They are dangerous. They are rapists. They are criminals. How dare these pilgrims engage in this dog whistling? And Kristi Noem, that is her forte. She did it again. Just recently on 4th of July, she got a hold of, somebody took a picture at Mount Rushmore of a window which purported to be from, there it is, purported to be from somebody who had escaped communism. And this is what I mean by dog whistling. That type of dog whistling, that type of propaganda caused the Cold War and almost operated as a false flag. The arms race, the superpowers having a need for, millions of troops. It's never the Putins, it's never the Bidens, it's never the Trumps, it's never the Bill Gateses or the Jeff Bezos or the Elon Musk families. It's never them that are asked to do these guys' bidding. But here's Kristi Noem, acting cute, thinking she's smart or something, sharing whoever's vehicle this is, referring to California as a communist state. And we've heard one of our producers has heard a South Dakotan refer to California as Commie-fornia. He was on the ground with Uniting Resilience and heard one of the settlers around here referred to it as Commie-fornia. The same type of people that tell you socialism is bad. I cannot believe that what Trump started, Kristi Noem is gladly carrying on. And we just need to share about it. We need to keep sharing these debacles and keep sharing this picture of Kristi Noem, because that's the kind of Noem that we're dealing with, a little evil leprechaun. And in fact, I do a disservice to leprechauns. I love the Irish. I'm actually part Irish. Don't let that slip out. But I am not a full-blood as previously claimed. I'm actually part Irish. And one day I'm going to visit Ireland and reconnect with my people. I won't be so pretentious as to say I speak on behalf of the Irish people, but I mean no disrespect to leprechauns or to Irish people with that graphic there of Kristi Noem or Kristi Noem. No disrespect. But if you recall, Kristi Noem also tried to start a fight over fireworks. She used state resources to sue the Biden administration and Deb Haaland so that she could have another fireworks show in our sacred lands during the 4th of July in the hottest. I mean, it's hot out here right now. My air conditioner don't work in my studio. Like, I'm barely staying on the grind here. It is the hottest, driest, most climate collapsy times that I've ever seen. So here's a suggestion, Noem. Why not worry about the actual people in your state, your actual constituents, the farmers, the ranchers, and ag producers who are facing this drought, who are facing this climate crisis? Why not stop dragging your feet, or better yet, putting up clear obstacles to the legalization of cannabis and hemp? Look how long you fought that, even though your state voters, your state constituents told you not to do that. They legalized cannabis and hemp, and you went the other route. Even your own party has told you to conduct yourself otherwise, but yet you went the other route right after the Dakota Access Pipeline, and not to mention the Pennington County and other South Dakota counties that sent troops to brutalize those people at Standing Rock. Right after that, you did the bidding of TransCanada. You passed a series of laws that encroached upon your citizens' rights to peaceably assemble, your citizens' rights to free speech. This was also known as riot boosting. And I mean, just the name of that, to think, I mean, again, the caucasity of these pilgrims to tell us that our speech is now limited. You cannot donate to the GNU Collective, or you cannot donate to 2KC Media, because that is criminal behavior. But yet the Koch brothers and the rest of the billionaire class, you can donate as much as you want. You can basically buy United States elections under the protections of free speech, according to Citizens United, a United States Supreme Court case. This is ridiculous. This is what you get. This is what ignorant settler colonizers get when you elect these kinds of leaders who want to limit or prevent the presence of critical race theory in our schools. They want to control what you're able to learn, the information that you're able to be exposed to. This is what you get when you have people who create something known as the 1776 Commission, which denies slavery, denies that race is real, that race is a relevant factor in the creation and in the present condition of this country. They don't want to see Juneteenth as a holiday. I mean, we had to drag these trogs into the 21st century. We had to say, look it, and this comes from my son. My son wanted to know what's critical race theory. And so we talked about it. And essentially it's people who are aware that race is a real thing. I mean, it's not a real thing, but it is real in the mind, and it was created, and there are institutions that were created to oppress people of other quote unquote races, and that this country was founded on slavery and genocide and land theft and still has those institutions. And we, the people of a different millennia, are in a position that we want to evolve. We want to respect each other's differences, and we want to teach the true history. We don't need to brainwash people into colonialism anymore, into patriotism anymore. That is something that in the veterans field, and especially in the American Indian veterans field, our veterans need to question those people who are sending them to die in foreign lands. Why does Dick Cheney get to send you to die? Why does Dick Cheney get to send my children to die? We're not questioning your bravery or your valor or your reasons for signing up for the United States military. We're asking you, I'm not a veteran, to question why rich people are sending working class people to die. Why are we the ones that got to die and then get left on the margins, on the fringe, end up homeless, end up traumatized? PTSD, 22 veterans commit suicide every single day because they're doing the violent bidding of these rich cats. We're not, this isn't an attack on veterans. And if you're too obtuse to recognize that, then I don't know what to say. But Kristi Noem is one of these people who wants to deny critical race theory, deny it even being taught. The type of people that want to deny science in the classroom, who don't want women to have autonomy over their bodies. Kristi Noem is also has used a state plane to fly all over the country at the behest of the Trumplicana world, at the behest of guys like Steve Bannon, the radical racist fringe. They are still very much at work. They have not skipped a beat. They are infiltrating every single city council, every single school board, every single elected office. Not only that, but they are introducing legislation. Now, I've just run out of things. There's too many things to cover about Kristi Noem in South Dakota. Like, this is crazy. They are also denying compliance. They are not complying with federal voting laws that require them to make it easy for people to register to vote. Native people who show up in these polling places or in the departments of social services or in any state agency, the DMV, any state agency. When we show up in those places, we're supposed to have our voter registration updated pronto, right now, but make it easy for us. Well, South Dakota is not doing that. Just like they denied, they absolutely were just, I would say, racist. They did not conform to the dictates of federal law in the Indian Child Welfare Act, and that is, I mean, there's too much to cover. But also, I will mention something that was sort of recent. Before she was governor, she was a congresswoman, and when she was a congresswoman, there was a guy named Trey Dowdy. I believe that's the brother that looks like Draco Malfoy from South Carolina, a Republican from South Carolina. No disrespect to Draco Malfoy, but Kristi Noem, along with this guy, sponsored federal legislation that would have breached tribal sovereignty and allowed state authorities to breach our borders, to breach our political and territorial integrity. It was called House Resolution 4864, the No Haven for Dangerous Fugitives Act. And I believe that she worked on this with the mayor in Rapid City, South Dakota, and possibly the chief of police. But they were trying to make it so that they didn't have to seek extradition from the reservation. And I can't believe that we are still living in this day and age where the purpose of these state governments, these state apparatuses, the counties, the municipalities, the cities, and even the federal government, if we don't have people like Deb Haaland always got to be in Biden's ear and the whole cabinet, that the Indian wars have not ended. The sole purpose of a colonial apparatus is to subsume, is to digest, to colonize, to actually absorb the original civilization that it seeks to erase, that it seeks to expropriate, that it seeks to keep in bondage. And that situation, that state of affairs is our reality. Everybody who's paid attention to guys like Stephen Newcomb, guys like Robert Miller, these are two professors that I know. While Stephen Newcomb works for the Sequan, and he's got a very good book out called Pagans in the Promised Land. He's probably got other books out too. Bob Miller, former professor, I took a class from Bob Miller. He's got a book out called Discovery and Conquest, I believe it's called. Robert Miller, Professor Robert Miller. There's a tons of other professors, that are on the Vine Deloria level there, that have deconstructed and analyzed exactly what is happening to indigenous peoples and to Americans in real time. Has deconstructed what we have to do in order to be who we are, in order to express those attributes of sovereignty, those attributes of spirit. Spirit authorized us to be sovereigns, and that sovereign is not our word, but to be authorized to determine our destiny. And I want to close, make some closing comments about, why we've been so hurried on the show the past week, and we're going to be hurried for another week. That is because it is ceremony time. As soon as the Thunder Beings return, as soon as spring equinox, what is called spring equinox, and the summer equinox come into our periphery, into our consciousness, into our being, then those of the human species who still honor their obligations, who honor their sacred covenant with the powers of creation, those indigenous nations then begin to conduct those ceremonies that are appropriate to that season. And that includes the fasting ceremony. In the Lakota language, it's called Humblechea, which means to cry, literally to cry for a dream, not the kind of dream that might come in the REM cycles, but a vision, to cry for a vision. And these ceremonies require 4 days and 4 nights, and in some circles people do what they can, but traditionally, and for millennia, it was 4 days and 4 nights of abstaining from food, from water, from tobacco, and if you can, sleep as well. And the purpose of these ceremonies is so that one could seek an enlightened understanding of their earthly purpose, of what it means to be a human being on planet Earth to this day. Throwing out the Gregorian concept, there's no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there's no June, July, August, there's no calendar, there's no 2020 in the year of some Lord. There are sunrises and sunsets, and Mother Earth is about 5 billion years old. And our knowledge systems give us an understanding about the creation of this universe. And my purpose isn't to go over all of those teachings. There are many resources out there for those to understand Lakota cosmovision, Lakota cosmology. There are many others. Mexica, the coastal civilizations, the people of the corn, the people of what is now the Atlantic Ocean, what's called the Atlantic, every different area, the people of the poles, the people of the indigenous, what is Byhalia. Shout out to Tupac Enrique, who taught me that word, who also taught me the word cosmovision. I try to listen, and though my elders sometimes scold me for not listening to the elders, I do catch what you're laying down, and I hear it all the time. Whether it is to scold me, and that's our job, is to be scoldable, to be open to coaching, to know that we don't know everything, even though each of us are authorized in our own understanding to reformulate that, to understand it in a way that makes sense to us. I know that on several different tribal lands right now, there are sun dances going on, and we need to be respectful of those times. I mean, people say it's that Facebook, social media is not the place to talk about ceremony. It might not be the place to share pictures because pictures are prohibited, but we should definitely be talking about ceremony. We should definitely be talking about protocols. We should definitely be talking about indigenous metaphysics, indigenous isms and ologies, ontologies, the ways that human beings know themselves, the way human beings center their being, the way that human beings can make relations to the rest of the powers of creation. We cannot leave that to the colonizer and the digitization of our existence. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, walking around with a little artificial intelligent device, calling to me, hey, yo, you got to check me, get your finger on, check in here. You got notifications, you got things going on. I see this with all of our children. none of our children are unimpacted by these other foreign cultural mythologies, and that includes the mythology that technology and scientific supremacy can save us, that there's any salvation or redeemability in that. Why do you think, if you want to see an expression of that imbalanced mythology, check out Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and whatever that Branson, the billionaire class is racing to colonize Mars. They're racing outside of here because of that imbalanced cultural mythology. And there are indigenous nations who have survived that attempted usurpation, that attempted theft of spirit. By the graces, we have survived. La Colia, La Col Wichocha Echumpi, Nahachji, Sloyapelo. We still know these things, even though there is a foreign language running our consciousness at times. We still know the drum. We still know the song. We still conduct ceremony. We still uphold our obligation, and we are still finding our voice. We are still healing. So don't get discouraged when you make mistakes. Forgive yourself for any mistakes you might have made. Don't hold yourself away from those circles because of our human frailty, because of our human fallibility, because of the human condition. We are all trying to wake up from this colonial nightmare. That goes for all of our allies. Those guys were colonized way before Europeans landed on our shore. They colonized all of our Celtic brothers and sisters, all of the Druids, everyone that was there conducting themselves in this manner was sought out, targeted, and hunted, and colonized, and neutralized. So we are all on a healing journey. Anyhow, I wanted to share a little bit about what's going on at this time, because we have our obligations too. Wherever you're at, however you can help out, it means the world to everybody who depends on these ceremonies. And the Samis, thank you for checking in. That's what I'm saying. All over the globe, we are still struggling. We are still struggling to survive. Onipikta cha, lechamuelo. This is why we do these ceremonies, so that we can survive. And now more than ever, we need ceremony. The climate is collapsing. Mother Earth and the powers of creation are sending us very clear signals. When the ocean is on fire and they're using some kind of water sprayer to spray water on a burning ocean, that is apocalyptic. That means that we have a duty, a responsibility, an obligation to wake up and to conduct ourselves accordingly. And sometimes that's going to drive us to the front line. Sometimes that's going to shock our conscience. Sometimes that's going to dissociate us from the confines of colonial rule, colonial jurisprudence, colonial governance, colonial extraction. They are killing the planet, and we are letting them. So that's my closing thoughts. I want to honor everybody who is taking their time to conduct themselves in that way, to seek the red road, to seek a path of redemption, deliverance, and salvation, who are offering themselves in those sacrifices. Nobody's dying for our sins. We don't do it like that. Like we got to pay for our own sins. We got to seek our own redemption according to our own sacrifice, our own abilities, our own flesh and blood. And with that, I just want to say thank you. If you're still with us, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this time and energy with us. It's been Cut to the Chase number 23, if you can believe that. I want to thank Lakota People's Law Project, Indigenous Peoples Movement. I heard we're going out live over Indigenous Peoples Movement. They are now a sponsor. We are going out live over Last Real Indians. They have been a sponsor. And I want to say that these worldviews, these perspectives, these ways of interpreting the universe, these are global in nature. These are not confined. Yes, they were given to people of Lakota blood. But my teachers have always taught that these are worldly knowledge systems. These are systems that belong in the family of quote unquote religions, even though you couldn't call us a religion. But certainly we should be speaking our truth so that those in those other constructs respect us. Because otherwise they're walking around without an understanding that Mother Earth is alive, that they actually need clean water and their children need clean water, and every other Wamakashka, every other living being needs clean water. So I want to spend about that much, just kind of, and thank you for letting me get on my soapbox here, guys. I want to say Lila Wopila Tanka Chichapalo. And again, next week, be ready. I might not be able to be with you live, but we'll prepare something for you. So again, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sharing the stream. Please go to our podcast. Thank you to everybody new who's joined our podcast, who's subscribed. It's real easy. You just hit the subscribe button. If you want to be a financial subscriber, if you want to keep the show going, keep empowering us, keep emboldening us, you can become a contributor for as much as a cup of tea every single month. We're talking $5 a month. And we've also got some perks for you, but we've got no way of getting those out to you right now. So just know, if you become a paid subscriber, we are going to hook you up. We are going to give you the goods. And that includes, well, I'm not going to say what it is yet, but we are going to get hooked up. So please, the podcast includes so much dope material, Keely material. Shout out to Drew Murphy, the only brother that calls me Dove. I want to say thank you, guys. Hit the subscribe button. If you like what you're hearing, if you appreciate the way that we're able to kind of break it down, and make it translatable, make it into a way where you don't have to read it. I don't really like reading either, but that's part of my job. It's part of how I got through law school. I had to force myself through it. So we do that so that we can all share that same ethos, that we can consider the information and make our own decisions. But with that, I want to say thank you. I'm about to get out of here. The name of the podcast is Cut to the Chase. Cut to the Chase, Iron Eyes. You can search it like that and make it much easier. You see a happy little face of my mug on there. Cut to the Chase. That is the name of our show. That is the name of this webcast. And I couldn't be more pleased with our team. The control room, who I refer to as control, they're behind the scenes. They're like the wizards behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Making things happen. And they make it enjoyable. It's a good visual presentation. And the podcast is even as powerful because you can listen to it wherever you go. If you listen to podcasts, how can you sponsor? Come on to the podcast and become a paid subscriber there. That's the easiest way. So again, Lila Wopila Tanka, I want to say thank you. This has been Cut to the Chase number 23, and we are out.